Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So, with the pandemic and everything that kind of went on, I think a lot of people are trying to find different ways to kind of save money. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of get into was basically recycling cans. So this was something that I did, I remember as a kid. And basically my dad gave me like a rubber mallet, told me to go in the garage and start crushing cans. And then we would recycle the cans and get a little bit of money back. So when I Googled it real fast, it looks like right now it's about 37 cents a pound at a lot of places. There's like the kind of averages across the US. So it could be higher, it could be lower in your area. Now, in order to make a pound, you need 24 cans. So in no way, shape, or form is this a drink more soda to make money kind of situation. If anything, it's a, you know, here's how you can recoup some of that soda money. So you can pretty much use just whatever you have. So I've got quite a few mallets and stuff. And then this is just a wood block I made a while ago. And then pretty much just crush the can. So easy peasy. Didn't cost any money. Probably took 10 seconds. The problem is, sometimes these things launch. And what do you mean when I say launch? I mean, if you hit it bad, it's going to go somewhere else, and you got to go track it down. And also, it all depends on how flat you want to make it. The flatter you get it, then the smaller the bag you got to take somewhere. So, if you don't want to just use a hammer, you can try what I just bought. And it's going to wind up costing me about 600 cans. So last time I was at Harbor Freight, I picked up one of these multi-load can crushers. And they cost about $9. So 37 cents goes into $9. A little bit more than 24 times. So we'll call it 25 times to make it easy. And if we know that we need 24 cans to get the 37 cents, then we're looking at about 600 cans that you have to crush and turn in at the US average for the trade-in in order to pay for one of these. But this thing looks pretty cool. So it's a multi-load. So essentially you're able to load in a whole bunch in this upper kind of like basket section. And then it crushes it and then drops it straight down at the bottom. So once you open everything up, you've got basically the handle, the frame, a piece that crushes, the basket, some hardware, some spacers, and a couple pins, and a clip that you don't want to lose the clip. But it looks like essentially assembling it, you don't really need any tools. So this bolt here uses this wing nut. So obviously you can put that on with just your hands. And there's nothing on this end that you would have held with anything. So essentially it seems like assembling it should be pretty easy. When it comes to mounting, I'm going to use a stud finder real quick to see what I can find. I'm also going to use this electrical detector, which is pretty cool, just to make sure that I don't want to run on a screw somewhere that doesn't need to be. And then this comes with screws, probably for you to mount it. But I wanted something a little bit stronger, so I bought, 2-inch screws, so a little bit longer screws, and a little bit better screws probably in the long run. And then you'll wind up needing to drill. So the instructions seem to be pretty good, but this also seems to be fairly simple to look at. The one thing that I was a little concerned about, though, is like right here, you can kind of see that this is kind of notched in these corners. So I would assume that it should run up and inside of here with those notches. The problem is that with so many things from Harbor Freight, sometimes things get squashed. With it all the way back here, you can see that it's all the way up high. And in theory, at least as I can tell, where it should be running. But as soon as you start to slide it back, this starts to narrow, which this side here is still where it's supposed to be. This side has now slipped underneath right there. So it seems like it's bent just a little bit. It might need tweaked out just a touch to make sure it's running where it's supposed to be running. So this probably isn't anything, you know, overly bad, and it'll probably wear itself so that that goes away. But for me, I kind of want to make sure that this is right. So I'll probably wind up bending these out just a little bit, just to get them to be about where I think they should be. All right, so that wasn't too bad. It now slides relatively free. The part that I really couldn't get to open up that much was right around in this section here. But all I did was I just put a hand on this side, a hand on that side, and pulled out. And I was able to get mostly nice and smooth now. Okay, so that little C-clip was a little bit of a pain in the butt. And anytime you're dealing with a C-clip, you got to remember that it's going to be kind of like a tensioned or a sprung situation. So if you don't wind up getting it sliding on really easy, so I tried using the bolt just to help slide it on, and it was kind of fighting me a little bit. So I just grabbed a quick set of needle nose, and basically all you wind up doing is just putting one part of the needle nose in the back on the pin, and then slowly squeezing that clip in place. We've got the dip part here, and then this elbow section here. So dip part here, elbow section here. So far, she's going together the way the instructions show. So the next step is pretty simple. It's just inserting the crushing block into the frame. So again, this little rounded section here goes on the top. This is inserted in. And then they want you to insert the bushings in We've got the pin in of one of these black bushings on both sides, and then the wing nut. So the wing nut bottomed out pretty good, so that feels fairly tight. And then this moves. I swear it moves. I was about to install this frame when essentially I just set the next can on, and you can see it doesn't just fall in. So there's still a fair amount of this inside part that's kind of tight on it. So it's almost like whenever part of the process happened that like crimped these down and in, it went a little bit too far. So I'll see if I can just grab here and grab there and see if I can't build some more clearance in. I did my Incredible Hulk impression, and now we're good to go. Hopefully. Let's try a different size can, a different can. Okay, both Coke and Pepsi fits. Next up we run into a problem on is this cage. So this cage, these little bars down here, clip inside of these little clips here. So essentially, this side here will almost go in, so this just needs clearance a little bit. This one here is got plenty of room, but this one is way too tight. So I'm going to take the screwdriver real quick, pry her open. I was able to get that one pried up. This one here I pried up just a little bit too, just to make sure both sides are on there. And then these sit on the outside and act as stabilizers. So we're all good to go. Do another quick check. All the way down and in. Should be good. Now then for mounting, we'll have to take this back off. But real quick, we'll try and look at where I want to have it mounted at. But I figured for most of the 600 cans that I need to crush in order to pay for this, I'll be sitting while I do it. And what I'm thinking is that I want to have a container down below, which it can either be like a full-on trash can container. Otherwise, a box with a garbage bag will work just fine. And I want to have it high enough that when I have this mounted, it's not out of the way for me just to throw a can on. and it's not, you know, too cumbersome just to pull her down. So I think about right here is almost perfect. So right next to that little weird mark. And then what I'll do is I'll take this extra board here and mount it as an extra backing. That way there's extra support besides just the 1 or 2 screws that might be able to go into that stud. And it'll help keep everything nice and strong, and I won't wind up like ripping the wall out or something like that if I'm extra vigorously crushing cans. So real quick, we'll check for studs. This is kind of a handy little tool because it's like learns as it goes. So right now it knows the thickness of the wooden siding, the wooden board and stuff. So it should detect additional thickness and tell me where a stud is. Oh, we're getting close. So there's definitely a stud there. And then it should also warn me if there's any electrical. I've got all the electrical stuff on at the moment. But what we can do is we can use one of these. This is pretty cool because it essentially senses like electrical load or the presence of electricity wirelessly. And it detects it to within so far. So with me just using 2-inch screws, as long as this doesn't light off anywhere, I think we should be good. And being it's kind of a remote corner of the garage, I don't think there's any electrical ran through here. So I think we're good. But just in case you wanted to see what it looked like if there was power. All right. So with the backing board piece, I just did 2 screws right here, one right there, and one right there. And basically the board already had some holes in it, so it was just kind of something I had lying around. But that should be pretty close to the stud, and I kind of angled them in a little bit. That way hopefully they hit. Then for this one and this one, these are kind of angled a little bit too, because I was kind of wanting to make sure they hit the stud. The other ones are angled just so it was easy to run in. So, like, depending on your drill, you may wind up hitting the frame as you're running the screws in. So this one's coming down at an angle, this one's going up at an angle, and then these here, the center ones, you've got more room on, but they're about the same thing. So pretty simple. She's in place. Seems like a good height. Everything moves smooth right now. We'll put the cage on. We'll give her a shot. All right. So we've got 3 normal cans, 1 bigger can, and by setting up your cage out farther, you allow the bigger cans to go in. So let's see how it goes. Oop. Oh no, misfeed. Down 2. Oh, doesn't like it. All right. So, not bad, not super great. Not a big fan of this handle. So, I don't know if it would stay up better if I slid the cage back just a touch. Woo, barely dodged that one. All right. Then this time around, I've got some going tab facing me, some tab away from me. This seems to be a problem, because it seems like you almost have to always reload it. Alright, so now I've got this slid all the way back so that it's touching this back tab here, but oh, it's a failure to eject. Kind of a semi-failure to feed. Alright, so same spot as it was before. I just put about, I think that's maybe a 1x4 back there. So just a little bit of scrap wood I had sitting around. But it helped close up the distance here, which I'm hoping helps with it jumping around and maybe lets it feed better. Oh, there we go. We're in the money now. All right, so that went way better. All I needed was just that little bit more spacing in the back to help keep everything aligned up a little bit better. And can size, it looks like it crushes them to about this size. So not super squashed, but smaller than they were. And just to help kind of keep this semi-lubricated, or like the finish in good shape, I'm going to use a little bit of this WD-40 Specialist water-resistant silicone lubricant. And it's supposed to be safe for plastics. But essentially I'm just going to kind of hit the inside of the frame. And a little bit on the the crusher part itself. Maybe just a touch in the hinges. So, not going to make a huge difference, but I'm hoping it just helps with simple things. Like, you know, if the plastic ever starts wearing into the paint, hopefully this helps with that. Wow, it does move significantly smoother though. And then it looks like this one's the worst crush so far. So it looks like it got most of it, but it was just enough that it looks like it bent it just enough to flip out the bottom. And then so far, if you want to see roughly how small it makes the cans, this is a full bag. That was a bag just as full. That's the result. So it takes a pretty good sized bag, makes it about half a bag maybe. That turned 2 of those big giant overflowing bags into one, probably say 80% full crush can bag. Mini can curveball. Oh, made that smaller. All in all, kind of interesting. As with a lot of stuff from Harbor Freight, you kind of got a 50-50 shot whether or not it's going to work. But, you know, it wasn't overcomable. So, we were able to assemble this mostly by hand. You needed a screwdriver to kind of pry up on some of this stuff. The clearance in here was too tight, so you had to bend out the frame itself in order to get it wide enough for a can to even drop in. Then, it seems like in order for it to feed reasonably reliably, you need to make sure that you've got some sort of support in the back, at least an extra inch or so, if you have this all the way back. That way it's able to feed the cans down and in consistently, as opposed to almost trying to feed two of them at a time, or having to constantly use your finger to realign after every time you crush a can. But it's pretty simple, pretty cheap. The part I'm going to be interested in is the longevity of it, because I don't know if this is going to wind up getting really bent out of shape as I keep working this, and if it'll make it up to the 600 cans to pay for itself. But we'll definitely find out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'll check you guys next time. Oh, why does math always stop me? I was gonna say something. How much of that video is just of my hand? Just a little bit sticking out. Just about. You son of a whack. Oh, you are not to crush. Stay up.